Welcome to Saturdays at 7, Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. My name is Todd Ream. I have the privilege of serving as the publisher for Christian Scholars Review and as the host for Saturdays at 7. I also have the privilege of serving on the faculty and the administration at Indiana Wesleyan University. Our guest is Mary Van Brunt, president of Spring Hill College. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Southern Living has referenced the Spring Hill College campus as one of the most beautiful in the Southeast, while the Princeton Review has referenced it as one of the most beautiful in the country. In what ways, if any, does the campus draw inspiration for such beauty from its physical location in Mobile, Alabama?
Well, I'll tell you, Spring Hill's beauty is really both natural and intentional. And our campus sits on the highest point in Mobile, and it's surrounded by oak trees that have stood for generations. And it really creates a space that I think inspires reflection and a real sense of peace. And that natural beauty connects to our Jesuit tradition of finding God in all things and seeing the sacred in the everyday. So I feel the design and the feel of our campus are really rooted in the belief that beauty does inspire purpose, learning, and community. So I think that physical setting we have just invites students and faculty and staff to slow down, to think deeply and to really connect more meaningfully with others.
One of the details that often gets described the most is the approach to the campus that one goes through. Can you tell us briefly what that looks like and what one experiences when coming into the campus maybe for the first time?
Sure. So when I mentioned the oak trees, we have what's called the Avenue of the Oaks. And I think it's the most photographed place in Alabama. Everybody in the community comes there, but you walk or you drive down that avenue and the oak trees just kind of come together across. And it is just breathtaking. We have our commencement ceremony there every year. And we have, when the students come in as freshmen, they walk one way up the avenue, and commencement, they walk the other way. And we do it, rain or shine. And I'll tell you, God's usually on our side. Probably in the last almost 200 years, there's just a handful of times that we had to move it inside. So It is really just breathtaking beauty whenever you walk. And that's why we have so many people that walk on campus and, the students, the community, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Spring Hill College is also the oldest college or university in Alabama, the oldest Catholic college or university in the Southeast, and the third oldest Jesuit college or university in the United States. As Spring Hill College approaches its bicentennial, what advantages, if any, does that history afford the college with a means of interpreting its identity as a Jesuit Catholic university?
Well, I'll tell you, our history is really a tremendous gift. Spring Hill has always stood at the crossroads of both faith and progress. We were one of the first colleges in the South to admit women, and we were the first in Alabama to integrate, welcoming African-American students in 1954, which was about a decade before anybody else. And those actions, I think, were not only historic, but really were deeply aligned with our Jesuit values of justice, dignity, and the love for all people. And it was our courage in those early years that, gained from the respect from Martin Luther King Jr., who actually commended Spring Hill College in his letter from Birmingham jail on our ability to integrate way before anybody else, because it was the right thing to do. So as we approach our 200th anniversary, I think that legacy lays a real strong foundation for renewal. It reminds us that being a Catholic and Jesuit college in the Deep South carries both privilege and responsibility. So we're called, really to be a light, I think, for inclusion, service, and education that transforms lives while remaining, firmly rooted in our faith, our community, and in that holistic development of the mind, body, and spirit that really defines a Spring Hill College education.
Thank you. Historically, the largest populations of Catholics were found in the Northeast and Upper Midwest. And as a result, the largest concentration of Catholic college universities are found in cities such as Boston, Philadelphia, a city in which you spent quite a bit of time, Chicago, and Milwaukee, to name only four of them. The Catholic population in the Southeast, however, is one of the fastest growing in the country. What opportunities does that population shift offer a Catholic and Jesuit college such as Spring Hill?
So I think it really offers us an incredible opportunity. And I will say a lot of our alumni are from some of those areas you mentioned,
Mm.
Philadelphia, Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Louis. And, in the past, that's where the heavy populations were. But we are seeing that growth in the Southeast. And I think for us, it reflects a shift in that faith communities are really thriving. And we're proud to be just one of the few Jesuit institutions in the Southeast in this part of the country. So we look at it as it enables us to share the values of Jesuit education with a broader and more diverse group of students who really are looking for a purpose, not just a degree. So the challenge for us is to really keep pace with that growth and make sure we remain accessible, relevant, and responsive to the needs of the families and some of them who are new to Catholic higher education. So we have to continue to adapt our programs, outreach, and support systems so every student feels at home and equipped to succeed at Spring Hill, both academically and spiritually.
Thank you. What challenges then, maybe, if any, does that population growth offer for a Jesuit and Catholic college such as Spring Hill?
So I think the challenges are, if these are students in a new market that aren't used to, let's say, being in Mobile, being in the South, or even the Catholic education, how can we meet them where they are and make sure, that we have the support they need so that they're successful? We want every student to feel like they belong on campus and to enjoy their time here. So if it's a new population, just really making sure we're meeting their needs.
Thank you. I want to transition now to ask you about your own formation as an educator and as an educational leader and your service to Spring Hill today. You earned a bachelor's in economics from Ursinus College, an MBA from St. Joseph's University, and then a PhD in economics from Lehigh. At what point in time did you know economics would play an important role and how you understood your vocation?
So, I've always been fascinated by how economics really shapes lives, communities, and really opportunity. So early in my career, before I got into higher education, I actually worked in the financial sector. And I worked in retail banking, commercial credit analysis, commercial audit, real estate development lending. And then also I was a certified management accountant and worked in the pharmaceutical industry and the securities industry. So that really gave me sort of a practical application of economics, both at the micro and the macro level. But I think when I got into teaching and really learning more about economics, it was never about studying the numbers or the theory. It's really about understanding like the human impact of our financial decisions and how really thoughtful leadership can help people and organizations thrive. So during my doctoral studies, I had some mentors who really encouraged me to view economics as, not an abstract discipline, but as a tool for positive change. So how do you promote fairness, sustainability, and the common good? And I was especially drawn to the idea for businesses of the triple bottom line: people, profits, planet. So there are ways to do that and to really, again, I think, live that purpose for economics and help all that we can. So really those lessons, I think, from my early experience in working in the financial field really shaped my career as a teacher and helped my understanding of the vocation, which is really how do you use your gifts to serve others?
Economists are often inclined to reference themselves as being part of a school of thought. Are there any authors in particular who were more formative in terms of your study and the way you understand and interpret economics than perhaps any others?
Well, I will say I was probably most fascinated, and one of my favorite classes I taught was on the Great Depression and
Mm,
when macroeconomics really came to be. And so, really, I think understanding that's Keynesian economics and how that works really had a strong impact on me. But
right.
in my day to day life and in my career as a president, I would say the concept of opportunity cost is probably the one thing that I carry with me most. And I look at it, and again, all my decisions, whether they're professional or personal, what is the opportunity cost of
Mm,
doing this or not doing this? So that's probably one of the biggest things I've carried with me.
yeah. Thank you. You mentioned that you worked in industry for a number of years and then eventually made the transition to teaching. Can you tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about the discernment process that brought you from industry into academia?
Sure. Well, I will say teaching was always, at the heart for me. But when I was in college and I was an economics professor, I thought, I want to make a lot of money. I want to get out there. I want to, be the CEO of the bank and make a lot of money. And because I didn't come from a lot of money, and that just seemed to be the most important thing. But, as I was rising up in the ranks and honestly, I was having my children, I just had to really reassess, am I really using my gifts? Is this really why God put me on the earth to be a banker and to, do this? And so I taught a class and I just loved it. And I said, oh my goodness, can I do this for a career? So and I had to get my PhD. I had to do something, so it took a few years. But it was that true calling to serve others and to be a teacher and to help. And so that really, I think, is what drew me into the field of academia and teach. But coming with a corporate industry background at the
Mm,
same time, I think is what led me eventually back into administration.
thank you. You eventually earned the Christian R. and Mary F. Lindbeck Foundation's Award for Excellence in Teaching, an award given to faculty members serving at colleges and universities in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. How would you describe your sense of understanding of the vocation of the teacher? What drove you each day? Where did you see joy in the eyes of the students that you served? And what made the experience valuable?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, and I probably speak for most teachers, but I could be having the absolute worst day, and I would get in the classroom and start talking with the students, and it just all went away. I mean, again, trying to, especially I was teaching economics and finance, which are sometimes difficult concepts for them, but really seeing that light bulb go off, or really trying to get students to understand it and to help them where they were struggling was one thing that I really gained a lot from. The other for me was honestly the ethical piece,
Hmm.
was bringing those Catholic values, to the table and sharing with the students some of my past experiences,
Mhm.
and that they would be tested, and I wanted them, to really think through that. So it was to me forming leaders with others, and when I left the banking industry, I thought I could probably do more good by going to college and preparing ethical leaders in finance
Mm.
than I could just working myself. And so again, I do think it was a calling. And then the college kids, they keep you young, and they're the best thing because, they're idealistic and they have so much excitement and enthusiasm. And I just love that. And I love that they ask a lot of questions, and they don't just, take what you say, they push back. And, it really, I think, made me learn more about economics and finance, and then you're just so proud of them when they go off and do amazing things. So
Yeah.
it is really, like I said, it's a calling, but it is serving others. And I just, I miss being in the classroom now that, I'm the president. I don't get to be in the classroom as much anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, in the transition then into administration, you served as the founding dean of the School of Business, Media, and Arts at Cabrini University and the provost and vice president for academic affairs at Gwynedd Mercy University. Can you describe the discernment process that led you then incrementally from full-time service as a faculty member into accepting administrative service as part of your vocation?
Sure. And they say the faculty call that going to the dark side, but
I've never heard that myself. I
you
certainly never
heard
uttered that.
No, I think for me, I was a faculty member, for 11 years, and they had been asking me to go in administration because I think of my background in finance, especially in economics. And I was, used to working long hours. So I was on every committee, strategic, finance committee. And I loved that part of it too. So I was always intrigued, but I honestly waited till my children were old enough that I could give up some more time for that. But the discernment for me, I never started in higher ed saying, I want to be a dean or I want to be a provost or a president. I just wanted to be a faculty member and do the best job I could. And so when I moved into administration as an associate dean first, I thought, maybe I can help more students because now I can impact, policy in the school and make sure there's support. And so I, did that job and, went really well, loved it, did a lot of work. And we moved to a university. So that's when we launched the Business, Arts, and Media School. And I was the inaugural dean. And, I loved the growing new programs and partnerships. And I was very happy doing that, loved Cabrini. And then honestly, I got a call about Gwynedd Mercy. I wasn't even on my radar. And they said, we'd like you to apply for the provost, or are you interested? And so I thought, okay, this is a way that I could, again, impact more students and work with the more faculty. And so for me, the discernment was, when I was approached with an opportunity was one, is it a good fit? I would only work in Catholic higher ed. So making sure, that again, my experience would benefit the college. So I loved, I was at Gwynedd Mercy for 4.5 years, again, was not looking to leave. And then I got a call from Spring Hill. And, that discernment was, I thought, can I do this? Can I be a president? But I was really called to the Jesuit Catholic because in the Catholic higher ed, the Jesuits, they have that academic excellence. And, I really was looking forward to that. And then I came to the campus and just fell in love with the campus, the people, the mission. And we were on the plane ride home and I said to my husband, this is where I want to be. Like this, I feel like is where God is calling me. So that was sort of my discernment process, but I was not one of these people that said, I'm going to be a president someday. If you ask my college friends, they'll laugh at that. When it was announced, they thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever heard.
Yeah. In what ways, if any, was the fact that you would be the first female president in the university's long history part of that discernment process?
It was part of it, but honestly, not so much because I really felt like, Spring Hill's always been what I would call a trailblazer. So, they're out there, they're doing things when they need to do them. So, like I mentioned before, doing the integration and admitting women. So I didn't really look at that as a barrier, to be honest. I just thought, okay, great. They're ready for change. They're ready. They're courageous. They're ready to, adapt and do something different. And, that's what I found when I got here is that, they have those values. They have that strong legacy, the history and everything, but they're not afraid to embrace change and, to try new things and to evolve in this changing higher ed landscape. So it honestly didn't impact me as much as I think most people thought it would.
You have a history in Catholic higher education. How did you come to understand and appreciate the charisms of Jesuit higher education as expressed as Spring Hill? Because you mentioned that was part of the attraction to come to the campus.
So, I will say um, when I was at Cabrini, I spent a lot of time focused. I was on a strong mission committee, and we spent a lot of time focused on Catholic intellectual tradition, Catholic social teaching, and Catholic social thought, which is really the foundation I believe so strongly in. And the missionary sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus at Cabrini, they were very focused on that, social justice, or that, serving the marginalized and preferential option for the poor, and really focusing on that. We did a lot of work with that. And then when I went to Gwinnett Mercy, the Sisters of Mercy are very similar. Again, they have more the mercy focus, but they were both in healthcare, they were both in education. And so when I started looking at Spring Hill, the charism, there's still that. I love the mind, body, spirit, the whole person, the holistic approach, that we have for students. That really resonated with me. But it's that same service component that, you're really focusing on, helping those that can't speak for themselves, and the marginalized. And so I felt the missions were very similar. And I read a lot of Hans Kolbenbach, who was, one of the Society Generals. And again, it really resonated with me, what he was saying, because it's, deep into that Catholic social thought that I really feel strongly about. So that part now was my first time working with priests versus sisters. So that was probably the biggest change. But the thing that I think the Jesuit charism has more so than any of the others is this discernment, is this really looking at, trying to discern, especially over big decisions, and making sure you're living that life of purpose, and that you do see God in everything and the beauty of the campus. And so that has, I think, just been a wonderful aspect that I wasn't expecting from the charism that I love.
For colleagues seeking to discern whether they are being called to serve as a president, what questions would you encourage them to consider in relation to their own discernment process?
I think it really is about, where can your gifts make the biggest difference? Where are you called to serve? And, I think it's a lot different. And again, I didn't do one of those vocational workshops that they do, because I never really expected to be a president. But, you have to really want to do the work of the presidency versus be a president. And in today's higher ed, it is not really a fun job, 98% of the time. But if you feel like you really have that to give, and you want to serve, because it is definitely a servant leadership role. One, you have to choose a place that is a good fit, and for me, it was the faith-based. I had to go somewhere that was Catholic and was proud to be Catholic. And, I could live my faith there. So that part was purpose. And then my background and my strength is financial, economic, analysis, strategic. So I was looking for a school that could really use those gifts. And Spring Hill, embraced that, because their past presidents had different skill sets. So I think it's important to find, where is that good fit? Where can you really benefit? And then you have to love the institution and the people, because it's going to be your life 24/7. And, I feel really strongly that to make a difference, you have to be there for a while. So for me, I was looking for one place that I could really, delve into and really become a part of that community for quite a bit of time. So I think it is very much a discernment process. And, If you're married, your spouse should be involved. Come visit, and that's a big part of it as well. So it's definitely not something taken lightly, but I think you know when it's a good fit, just like when you're looking at colleges to go to where your kids are, and they go to one and they say, "This is me. I can see myself here."
Yeah. Thank you. Earlier in our conversation, you referenced that plane ride home where you said to your husband, "This is where I want to be." When you were a candidate for Spring Hill's presidency, can you help us understand the ways, so using that sort of planning and assessment lens that you have, in what ways did you assess the institution's potential?
So, as a finance person, the first thing I did was went over the financial statement, pretty detailed, looked at those and had questions. I also spent quite a bit of time looking at, when we talk about potential, I looked at historical, what were their challenges and how did they overcome those challenges, And then for me, a big part of it was, okay, what is the potential? And I got here and I felt like there were things we could really do. And we have done a lot just in the last couple of years by having a more strategic lens, right? And looking and saying, okay, where can we grow? Where are our challenges? How do we overcome them? So we formed a strategic partnership with Rutgers University, which really established more graduate programs and pathways for our students. We're opening the Annette and Shelby Health and Science Innovation Center, new, 55,000 square foot building. We raised $13 million in the last 2 years for our President's Leadership Fund. And so all of these things, I could see there was potential as long as the campus was willing to change and courageous enough to change. And so that's what I saw there. And I think that the other big selling point for me, to be honest, was meeting alumni, because the Spring Hill alumni, they love this college. They love this college. And, we just had a homecoming. And I just came back from the West Coast meeting with alumni. It doesn't matter, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they come to homecoming. And this time here was transformational for them. So when you have an alumni base that's so strong and that cares so much, and then, you make some strategic decisions and you get the campus to make those changes, I think there's a lot of potential. So what I would, again, suggest for anybody looking at as a candidacy is, look at the bones of, you definitely want to look at the financial, but you want to look at the opportunities. If they're doing everything right and they're still struggling, that might be harder to fix and impact than if you really see ways to make changes.
Thank you. I want to transition now to talking about one of those opportunities that you just mentioned briefly, in that Spring Hill broke ground on a $35 million Health and Science Innovation Center, the Annette and Shelby Health and Science Innovation Center. In what ways will that facility help Spring Hill live out its mission as a Catholic and Jesuit institution?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really one of the most exciting projects in our history, and it really perfectly reflects who we are and who we serve. So this new facility is going to have state-of-the-art equipment, simulation space, skills labs, science labs. And it's really focused for our nursing students, our STEM students, our health science students, exercise science, and, it'll have collaborative learning spaces. I think this really reflects our mission because we're forming leaders that are going to be in service to others, mostly in the health profession. And we're training these healthcare, professionals right here in Mobile. So we're also working closely with the local community on workforce development because there's such a shortage for these. So to me, it's really a tangible expression of our Jesuit values that we're combining the academic excellence, because our nursing, our NCLEX pass rate's 100%, our medical pre-med students 100% get into medical school. So, that academic excellence is there. but we're combining that with their compassion, their service, and really their commitment to improving lives, which is all part of the Jesuit mission.
Yeah.
So it's a great fit for us.
Thank you. As our time begins to become short now, I want to transition to asking you about the academic vocation. So reflecting back on lessons that you learned as a teacher and as a scholar, as a part-time administrator, and now as a full-time educational leader of the institution as a president, how have you come to define the characteristics and our qualities of the academic vocation?
I believe the academic vocation, at least here at Spring Hill, is really about forming people of conscience and competence, right? So they can really, again, go out there to serve others. And it's grounded in that graduate Jesuit tradition of educating that whole person that we talked about. And really, you're nurturing their intellectual curiosity alongside their responsibility. So our faculty here, the teaching, they really embrace their role as mentors and models of integrity and helping students really figure out learn what they need to, but figure out what is their purpose in life. It's not just about how do we help them get that first job out of college. We really want them to find a life full of purpose. So I really think here, we really integrate that reflection, the service, the faith. And our educators, they're not just called to teach, they're really called to mentor and to help the student. But when you talk about, kind of, if we look at what are the virtues, right, that we think are really important, I think the most important virtues for academic life are really humility, integrity, and generosity. And, I say that because the humility really allows us to keep learning from one another for life. We're lifelong learners. The integrity really grounds us in the truth. And the generosity reminds us really to share our gifts. And as a teacher, that's what you're doing. You're sharing your experience, your thoughts, your gifts. I think the vices that can undermine that are complacency and fear of change. And so, again, as I've said before, a Jesuit institution, we always have to be reflective, but also courageous. And that's where, the fact that we're willing to adapt to new realities while staying faithful to our mission is really important. So I think it's that balance that really keeps the college vibrant and relevant.
Thank you. As you welcome new educators to campus, whether they be curricular educators in the classroom, the laboratory, studio, any number of spaces that they may occupy, or co-curricular educators that serve in spaces such as residence halls, student leadership programs, et cetera. Are there any particular practices that Spring Hill introduces them to that help nurture an appreciation for those charisms and help them be able to then pass those on?
Yeah, so we actually have a lot of, I would say, orientation programs. So any of our faculty, staff, coaches that start at the campus, they go through an orientation their first couple days or before the semester starts. And that's an orientation understanding, just the Jesuit faith and the charism, on a very basic level. So everybody understands what does it mean when we talk about cura personalis and that mind, body, spirit. So they understand the words and the link to the Catholic social thought. So that's like a half a day orientation. And then we offer Ignatian seminars on campus, and I did one my first year where, we'd meet once a month and we'd read about St. Ignatius and then we'd meet as a group and talk about it and reflect. And we'd learn a lot from those. So we have those things that go on. And then we have sort of a Ignatian seminar too, for those people that want to learn more and understand more. And then the Jesuits have an Ignatian colleague program, which I started right away. It's about a year and a half program. And, you're with about, I think there's 50 of us in a cohort. And, we go to seminars and we go to an international trip abroad and a mission trip. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be going to a silent retreat for the week where we'll do the Ignatian spiritual exercises. So I think we do a lot to really offer that to our faculty, staff, and then the students. We're doing, formation, campus ministry, and trying to reach them where they are. But I think that's one thing we do pretty well, and I really enjoy it. So I'm finishing up my third year, and I'm always learning something new about the charism or the Jesuits, and they're very generous with their time to teach us, because it's really the lay people that need to carry on the mission. As the Jesuit order that gets smaller, that's what we're seeing across all the campuses, that we have to know that mission so we can make sure we're living it.
Thank you. For our last question then today, I want to ask you, in what ways can a Jesuit Catholic college such as Spring Hill be of greater service, even greater service to the church in the years to come? And perhaps also, can the church be of greater service to colleges such as Spring Hill?
Yeah, so I will say, I think the relationship between the Catholic university and the church is really symbiotic. I mean, the church, I think, offers the guidance, the mission, and the moral grounding. And then the university, we bring inquiry, dialogue, and innovation. So at Spring Hill, I think that relationship is really lived out every day in our classrooms, our service initiatives, our community partnerships. So we serve the church, I believe, by forming these graduates, right, who are going to live on to carry on these values in every field and vocation. And in turn, I think the church really serves us by challenging us to remain faithful to our roots, but also responsive to the needs of the world. So I think the stronger that partnership becomes is really the greater our collective ability to shape compassionate, ethical leaders who are really going to make a difference. So we just actually got a new archbishop, Rivatuso, who's just joined Mobile about a month ago, and he's already been on campus, and so we're excited, he and I, to work together to, again, strengthen the Catholic community.
Thank you very much. Our guest has been Mary Van Brunt, president of Spring Hill College. Thank you for taking the time to share your insights and wisdom with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for joining us for Saturdays at 7. Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. We invite you to join us again next week for Saturdays at 7.